That's on across the street from my apartment window at the library. About maybe 150 feet from here, maybe 140 feet, something like that. 35 yards on a football field. And that's the Scottish Rite playing their bagpipes. And in 4 years of being here, that is the very first time I have ever seen or heard the Scottish bagpipes or the Scottish Rite playing their bagpipes across the street at the library. And I could literally toss the football to the bagpipe player from here. So they decided to come on this date in history, which is 4/20/2013, which would be 4/20/2013, or, according to some, the Get High Smoke Pot Day, and to others, the day of infamy, birth of the infamous Adolf Hitler, and subsequent events such as the Oklahoma Federal Building being brought down and under explosives in 1995 was a response to the killings in Waco, Texas, which happened around this date, 4/19, in 1993, which was coincidental to some, and to others it symbolized the advent of fascism back into the United States under our so-called liberal president, the honorable or dishonorable William Jefferson Clinton. And a year ago today, my brother passed away, and 2 years ago today, Fukushima, or this week, or let's just say in this month or so, Fukushima power plant suffered a major meltdown as a result of a massive earthquake, tsunami. And a year prior to that, on this very day, BP had an oil derrick utterly dismantle itself under about 1,400 feet or whatever of seawater, spilling out thousands of gallons a minute into the Gulf of Mexico, causing a massive, one of the worst environmental disasters in the history of this country. And that happened exactly 1, 2, 3 years ago today. So here's the Scottish Rite. I don't know if they're celebrating Hitler, or if they're celebrating the Oklahoma attacks, or if they're celebrating the Waco disaster, murders, or if they're celebrating or reminding me of my brother's passing 1 year ago this weekend. But whatever it is, they're there, and the music is clearly being played quite loudly. Bagpipes have a way of carrying quite far, which was why they were used in battles, because they had a way of rallying the troops from their faraway rural homes to join the parade and support the community in times of conflict. And the best way of getting people to respond was to play the bagpipes. And now it's a symbolic gesture. People like to remember the roots, and as you can see, it hasn't gone away. Especially here in Hawaii, where you at least expect to see a bunch of kids with red hair and kilts on playing bagpipes, and yet there it is. So this is an interesting day in history for me, for personal reasons, and it's an interesting day in history for the world for numerous reasons. And also 2 years ago today was the extremely violent, or let's say 2 years ago this last couple week period, we'll say the middle of March to the last week in April. In that time frame, a lot of really bad things have happened in the world. And another thing that happened 2 years ago in that period of time, was the near eradication of an entire town, large town. Joplin, Missouri, was hit by a massive series of tornadoes, as well as was Alabama and other parts of the Midwest and South, that literally made the entire world take notice of the massive increase in storm, how do we say it, severity. And there's no doubt about that. And although this year there was no major storms whatsoever, almost stormless, you might say. The year without catastrophe until, of course, the Boston Marathon, which came on the perfect day to symbolize the continuance of the symbolic gesture of in your face with violent events that in that case was resolved relatively quickly, even though 140 plus people were injured and 3 people were killed, or 5 people now, including one of the gunmen or one of the bombers, and a police officer who was assassinated basically in his car, along with 3 innocent bystanders in the parade who were killed by the explosion. I have no doubt that that was not a false flag, in my opinion. I don't see evidence of that. I see it as being a legitimate, or as how would I say, an untainted, unfabricated event by the government. Maybe the way they responded was interesting, since about 100,000 military personnel of all sorts, cops, special event, militaristic-based, how would you say it, SWAT teams, ATF teams, state police, local police, FBI. I mean, it was like they turned the town into literally into a police state in order to capture one 19-year-old kid. And everyone celebrated like the 4th of July when they shot the hell out of him with about 200 rounds of ammo going off at one 30-second clip, and him being pinned in a boat in a neighbor's backyard and one of the local people's backyard. And whether he survives or not is still up in the air. I don't know. He was in surgery last night. His brother was killed. His brother was a heavyweight champion of New England 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, and didn't seem to have any reason to want to do that. But they were from Chechnya, and they may have bought into some of the hyper rhetoric of extremism, which doesn't serve the best interest of them or of us, but it may have been what happened. Anyway, that's where we're at today. I'm sitting here going, hola. Here I am, saying, take a look and listen to the storm or the bagpipes and think about the fact that we've had all these strange series of events happening within this 2.5 week framework our 3 week framework, our 3 week time frame for the past 3 years. 3 years ago was BP. 2 years ago was the Fukushima tsunami and earthquake and power plant meltdown, which is still affecting us, so we just don't hear about it anymore. And last year, my brother passing away this weekend on the 21st of April. It's not a coincidence, I don't think. It's a strange set of patterns. And if you go back further, of course, there's the Oklahoma explosion, federal building being demolished by multiple bombs inside the building, which was reported but never made it outside the state, but is locatable on the internet. If you wish to find it on YouTube, you can find reports from the local affiliates talking about the first, second, and third bombs that were planted within the building, and not just some truck bomb by Timothy McVeigh. It was clearly set up as a patsy, but was never reported as such because it was obvious that it was the fix was in and the media was in on it, and they participated in shutting down the story from not leaving the state. Once the first initial stories of second and third bombs was reported, it was never heard of for the rest of the day. But those recordings were maintained and held in perpetuity for us, and you can find them if you're interested. And of course, back in 1993, 20 years to this weekend, 20 years ago to this weekend, to yesterday, was the massacre at Waco, which killed, I believe, 73 or 76 or 79, something in that range, men, women, and children who had no reason to be attacked the way they were, but were slaughtered after the FBI shot in incendiary grenades and incendiary smoke bombs through tanks that were piercing the structure and then ignited by those same tanks, as they reported did not happen when testifying in Congress, but later proof of the canisters were found at the scene, and the FBI was forced to recant that false testimony, those lies, and admit that they had, in fact, accidentally, and, mistakenly, as they always do, mistakes were made, and 70 some odd people were slaughtered and burned alive. But hey, we gave them a chance. They didn't want to come out, so fuck them. Plus, it was Hitler's birthday the next day, and let's celebrate the entrance or the entry of fascism into the United States under the auspices of our liberal master and criminal chief, Bill Clinton. But anyways, there it is. There's 7 events that occurred on this weekend, or on this 3-week period. I don't think I could find any 3-week period in the last 45 years that has that many major events. On the BP oil disaster. So you got, start off with Waco, go up to Oklahoma City, move over up 20 some odd years, 15 years, and come up to BP oil disaster, then move over to Fukushima, and then move up to Joplin, Missouri, then move up to my brother passing away, and then this year, of course, the Boston massacre and subsequent police crackdown and militarized police stating of Boston, Massachusetts for 4 days to kind of make a presence known and show the rest of the world what's coming, in my opinion anyways, and what they are really all about. So anyways, now the bagpipes are going full force, and they're fully engaged in their Scottish rights. Hopefully they're seeking to do the right thing and tell the truth. I don't know. Maybe they're just trapped in a time warp and haven't found a way to get out, so they have to do it. Or maybe it's just my imagination, and I'm able to vibrate that sequence into this recorder on my Toshiba laptop, which came back to life after sustaining a tragic accident, and has a glass of juice, thick, viscous juice, sweet and acidic. I don't mean Hasidic, I mean acidic, falling all over the keyboard into the microprocessing motherboard, and somehow it died and came back to life 3 weeks later. When I tried it again, it started up and suddenly worked. Now, I had gone out and bought another computer in the meantime, which I didn't like too much because I couldn't get the wireless to work very well, so I went back to the computer I thought had passed away and gave it a shot, one more chance to come back to life, and it came back to life. So here I am, and we're taking a break out there, and I'm going to stop my recording just because I've got my story, and that's the way it is. It's Saturday, April 20th in the year 2013. And hope you enjoy the music. I don't know, I like the bagpipes. They always do something for me. Back in the old days, I used to sit up in the hills getting high, and I don't mean too far in the back. I mean in the last 10 years. 10 years ago or so, 8 years, 9, 7, 6 years. I would sit up in the hills, get high, and listen to the bagpipes. This was out in California. Far, far from here, 3,000 miles from here, but sure enough, there's the bagpipes there too. And I would get high, sitting up on the hills, looking over the city, over the San Fernando Valley, and suddenly the bagpipes would start, almost without fail. It seemed like every single time I'd be up there. And which wasn't all that often, but it seemed like every time I was up there, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks, there they were. I guess you gotta practice the bagpipes to get good at it, or else they really sound crap. But here they are. They decided to come outside my window and show me what they're good at, and I appreciate that. I like the bagpipes, and I appreciate their loyalty to their Scottish oath. And I hope they don't become Masons and get used as fodder by the Illuminati for their facilitating operations into our government's control mechanisms, so they can take us over and turn us into a chipped society of one world government qualities that have nothing but the boot of tyranny stamped across its face for 1,000 years, as Orwell warned us about 100 years ago. It seems to be closer to being true today. Huxley reasserted that in 1957, saying it was more closer to that then than it had ever been, and I would have to reassert today that it's more closer to that now than it was back then. So nothing's changed, the dynamic hasn't shifted, it's still in progress. So let's try to stop that before we lose all our freedoms and all our rights and turn into a slave population and are killed on command or on a chip in our right hand or forehead or wherever it may be that can literally kill us with a keystroke, because they would be so armed with doses of highly toxic and concentrated cyanide that can actually be emitted on command through a keystroke, as was reported on Fox News about a year ago. But let's hope that doesn't come to pass, and that the truth wins out, and the freedom and the freedom-loving people of this country rise up and maintain their stability and holding their government accountable and making sure that these forces of incendiary tyranny are not allowed to participate in overthrowing this great nation that once looked like it had the world by the collar, but now looks like it's barely hanging on the collar. So let's try to readjust our orientation position so we can have that freedom and security that Ben Franklin said never sacrifice freedom for security, as Bush wanted us to do. Only a tyrannical fraud would ask for that, by the way. And all these Christians out here should have known that, but they didn't. And they allowed that fake to trick them into tolerating that kind of a move. And he didn't give them anything they said they wanted, and they helped them get elected for. He didn't give them anything. He just shooed them back into the pen, treated them like goats and cattle and sheep, and laughed at him as he walked out the White House. Threw the keys to the black guy as the house was burning down because the Fed had unraveled the economy with their mortgage bubble. And as Alan Greenspan walked out laughing, Bush walked out laughing, and $7 trillion of our wealth disappeared. But wealth is really an accumulation of labor, and labor can bring back that wealth, but it's a lot of work. If you know what $7 trillion looks like, you'd really understand how much work it represents. But it is what it is, and we're still here, so let's just not let it happen again, because Bernanke's trying to do it right now by producing $85 billion of paper every month, which is only going to saturate the economy in weak monetary value. It means your money is going down in value every single month they print money. That's called inflation, or a hidden tax. So are they trying to crash the economy? Possibly. It would represent the Zionist agenda. Obviously, they would like that, because it would put us into a war stance and having to go into a retroactive, fierce survival mode, which would indicate war, and the eradication of millions and millions of useless eaters, so they can then basically cleanse the planet of all the goyim, and they could then take over as the rightful heirs and owners in their new world order. That's the Illuminati plan. Let's not allow that to happen. Thank you. Yeah, it's true. They want to do it. And they will if they can. There's a lot of evidence. If you don't think I'm crazy, it's because you haven't seen the evidence. Wait till you see the evidence. You won't think I'm crazy. You'll think, where the hell were you when this was going on? That's what you're going to think, because I'm not stupid. I have a very, very solid background in psychology, and I spent 20 years in special education, and I'm a sociology buff. I'm a philosophy major and psychology major, and I know what I'm talking about, and I can produce the evidence. And this is simply a rough-hewn conclusion on years of pulling in evidentiary links to connect the dots to create this scenario that I just spelled out. But 420 seems to be a very interesting day, and the fact that I got the Scottish Rite Masons, or children of Masons, out there blowing their bagpipes out in front of my window today on 420 is it's not unusual given the history. It is in fact par for the course. So let's have a good day. See y'all later. Good luck. Bye.